But what we do have is we have an approach, and this is an approach that we think kind of helps start answering some of these issues for us, and it helps us kind of build on what we've been talking about today, and that's moving beyond campaigns. So what we see as the future is an approach where strategy is still the baseline of what we're doing. But from this, what we do is we define objectives, but along with defining what the objectives are of a traditional campaign or engagement platform, it's understanding the data requirements. So you're not just looking at, okay, you're trying to achieve this. What actual information do you need to know to actually deliver on that? The other thing, too, is how do you measure that? And so I'm going to talk a little bit further about measurement, and I'll actually even show you guys an example. From this, what we do is we develop one common integrated engagement platform. And it's kind of interesting because sometimes these things come together and you don't plan it, but it all just works out really well. Like the V example is a perfect example of an engagement platform being developed. And then what you can do is start running campaigns that become the drivers into those areas. So you can have campaign 1, campaign 2, and campaign 3. And those are these. And from these, what we can do is we can have very general brand versus DR type of objectives. We could have very audience-specific. So campaign 1 could be targeting 15-year-old boys, whereas campaign 3 can be targeting their mothers who are their influencers. We can go channel-specific. So campaign 1 can be more around social networks or whatever it happens to be. Campaign 3 can be a combination of traditional above-the-line media, so breakfast TV as well as press ads or whatever. And this all becomes a user experience. So what this allows us to do is it allows generic and targeted campaigns to work together. It allows appropriate channels that I just mentioned, including how traditional media fits into this. It also allows us to start putting qualification metrics associated with them, including self-selection. So the idea that we may think somebody is something, but if they decide they're something else within the engagement, we allow that to happen. And we allow that, we start capturing that information so that we know how to talk to them. And so the rationale behind this is, those campaigns become the engines that drive the engagement. Those campaigns become the ongoing way these things work. What it does is it creates a user base for us to build on. So we're not just remarketing each time to say, okay, hey, yeah, here's the awareness, here's what we're going out with. We actually know what you're interested in. We know how we've engaged with you in the past, so that's now we can build on that moving forward. We can target and focus dialogue based on users and their behavior. So if, for example, somebody uses their mobile channel to engage with the brand, we go after them in that mobile channel with the appropriate messaging. It also allows us to start putting in some metrics, including understanding user types, the channel value, the engagement value, and above all, what this all allows us to do is understand engagement throughout the user journey. So earlier I was talking about measurement and how do you actually measure some of these things. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was understanding sentiment and chatter. What this is really, probably from the back, you just see a bunch of blue and white. This is a product that we have within the Clemenger group and with the name particularly called Seventh Sense. Now, I'm sorry, there's a Sixth Sense video that was talking, which was all the nice video going out. This is Seventh Sense. Obviously, we haven't talked very well about what our product names are and all. But what Seventh Sense is, and what this is showing in particular, are different blogs and how the sentiment around a certain search term, how they're tied together. So the center blog, how it's tied into this. From this, what we can do is understand consumer sentiment by taking keywords and something that's bad or something that's good. We can see what the chatter is going on around brands. And what we can do is also see this on a geographic level. So not just, if you have a brand name like, for example, Kiwi Bank, which is very specific to New Zealand and you don't have an issue with it, that's not a problem. But when you start having names like, Tower Insurance or something like that, we can refine this level down now to a geo-specific audience. So the next thing I'm going to show you, and this is a little sneak peek for everybody. Some people here don't even know we're going to show this. This is something called the Clemenger dashboard. And for those people who are familiar with Google dashboards and everything like that, that's fine. But what I want to talk about is this is something, and you probably can't see these visuals. I'll pull up a full screen and I'll show you an example of this in a second. This is something that combines traditional site metrics, Google site metrics, web logs, whatever it is. We pull that all together. But also new channels, including social media. So we can look at Twitter feeds, we can look at Facebook groups, we can look at Bebo, et cetera, comments, things like that. We also start tying into media components. So we understand how an SEM spend, and that's search engine marketing, or a display ad, or even traditional offline, like you're in market with TVCs. Well, when are the TVCs hitting? How does that impact your online engagement? And then there's external events. So, it's nice to think that everything that's happening is based on media that, marketing that we're doing as an organization and as the internal clients are doing. But the reality is there's external things that are affecting the engagement. So, perfect example is crude oil hits an all-time high for, in the last 15 years. Well, if you're an oil company, that's going to affect what's going on with your brand. That's going to affect what people are saying about it when they go to a blog or when they go to Facebook or whatever it happens to be. Also, press PR activity, public, human interest stories if they're talking about a brand. How does that affect it? And the last thing, and this is kind of where we're taking it a little bit a level further than I think anything that we've seen. I'm sure somebody else is doing this worldwide, is to take contact points. So things like your call center. Knowing what the call center volume is and the number of complaints going on, well, that would be a great thing to put as an overlay within all of this data, wouldn't it? If people are complaining about things and then you see your call center volume also spiking, there's a pretty good reason why that's happening. And what we do is we use this all to understand the behavior within the content of the campaign overlays. And so it's not just about online behavior. It's a net aggregate result of all your marketing activities. So what I'm going to do here, hopefully, without screwing things up, is take this. So this is our dashboard. And this is a dashboard that we developed specifically for this conference. And what this is doing, and I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time reading this because I can't see it on this screen. This is allowing us to define what the metrics were in terms of the actual campaign, how many people we wanted to sign up. This is a real-time metric in terms of how many people have signed up. This is all being read specifically off the database, so we know that we've reached our goal. This is site traffic to our site. And again, this could be Google Analytics, whatever, and we can look at specific things that are happening. We can look over time on what the traffic has been. This is Twitter. These are all the things that are going on in terms of the hashtags that we have going on. So if you're hashtagging and you want to try to get it on the screen, you can go. It's a little bit hard to see because the screen's getting cut off, so I'll just kind of, hopefully. Like I said, this is registration data. When you guys all signed up for this conference, there was a box ticking what your interests were. What we can do is actually look at your interests, look specifically at the data, start pulling out, looking at different data sets so we can understand what's going on. And then this one, and Jim had this in his original presentation, these are the number of people based on user types. So we're starting to understand how these user types are being defined. Now, this is obviously us defining the user types, but as users start getting engaged and start understanding this, we can actually refine this moving forward. Now, the only way things like this work are obviously if the data is accessible, and if we as marketers have access to this data. If it's kept behind the closed walls, we're not going to be able to provide something like this to you. Now, the purpose of this isn't for us to hold it internally within an agency and show, look at all the pretty graphs and all the pretty pictures, and here's everything that we can do for you. This is something we give to the clients. And what this allows you to do is start seeing the effects of what you're doing, and also seeing the effects of external things happening. Okay. Sorry, going to just get through this. Okay, so how does this work over time? One of the things people were saying, okay, well, yeah, this sounds kind of great, but what kind of costs are associated with putting something like this together? And the reality is we don't look at this in terms of, okay, it's a huge expenditure to get into this space. What we're saying is, so this is right now, that's the past, this is the future. There's kind of this common thing that Tony and I have with past, present, future now. You could launch something with a campaign. It can be something very, very general. It can be something very specific towards a specific audience. But underneath that, you have your engagement platform, or the start of an engagement platform. And obviously, that engagement platform is based on understanding your data requirements, understanding your needs, putting in those measurement goals. And what we can start doing is, over time, running different campaigns that all feed back into the engagement mechanic. Now, what we can do is, as we learn how the engagement mechanic is working and what we need to get from people, we can update it. So this isn't static as well. We start updating this. Now, what the dashboard allows us to do is to start understanding what channels work. It starts understanding when we want to target a specific user type or when we want to target a specific conversion goal, what channels should we be going in? What kind of campaigns should we be looking at? Also, how do we start updating our mechanics based on what we're seeing? If there's, in 6 months, a new social media channel that is the big rage, how do we pull this data into it? How do we feed this into the system so it still continues to work?